Hi everyone, how are you doing this evening? Well, I should be reading Dune right now, but instead of reading Dune, I'm making a video about it because my experience with this book has been exceedingly disappointing, and I've referred to it now and then through various videos, live streams, what have you. But the truth is, I'm kind of stuck in the middle, and I thought I might try to unpack that a little bit. Maybe it'll give me a little more impetus to continue reading. Maybe those of you who are reading it or have read it can give me some motivation or tell me what I'm missing or what have you. Just keep it nice, please. I'm trying my best here, but yeah, I am definitely struggling to finish Dune. So, as I've mentioned, I'm about halfway. I have not yet finished book 2, so this is divided into three parts, right? 3 books. And just generally struggling to want to keep going, even though, I'm very excited about the new movie. I watched the trailer for that a couple weeks ago. Super stoked. But the book is sort of a different experience altogether. And I wanted to just kind of zoom in on something that I was thinking about today. Now, before I do that, you know what? This is getting to be quite silly. Okay, let's move this over. Okay. Just chill out over there. Okay. So, story time, when the first movie came out, right? Didn't know a thing about Dune, had never read it before, had heard of it. It just never really crossed my reading radar seriously. So when the movie came out, was going kind of through a difficult time and in the middle of a move. And when I sat down to watch Dune and watching the story of a guy whose life is filled with upheaval all of a sudden in more ways than one. And it starts with this big move, right? From his home planet to a completely different planet and environment. And that just really resonated with me. And I can't tell you how much it did. It just was, the timing of that movie could not have been better for me personally. And that's one reason I like it so much, is because for better or worse, I found myself in a similar position, and there's like this mix, right, of adventure and tragedy all rolled into one. And well, I didn't move to a planet and then, proceed to experience further tragedies. I will say that nevertheless, there were so many things in that film that just struck me to the core and made me want to read the book, and dig into that deeper. So, right off the bat, I kind of thought this book had a lot of promise. I think I've read this before, but I'm just going to read it again because I can. This is one of the little scenes at the beginning. He's still on his home planet of Caladan, and it's he's actually this is his mother, Jessica, Paul's mother, Jessica, who's reading this poem or reciting it. One of Gurney Halleck's tone poems for sad times. I remember salt smoke from a beach fire and shadows under the pines, solid, clean, fixed. Seagulls perched at the tip of land, white upon green. And a wind comes through the pines to sway the shadows. The seagulls spread their wings, lift, and fill the sky with screeches. And I hear the wind blowing across our beach in the surf, and I see that our fire has scorched the seaweed. Just an absolutely lovely moment here that kind of sums up for you the planet of Caladan, which you see in rather more descriptive detail in the film than even I think is really described here outside of this poem, which, doesn't explicitly say it's Caladan, but it seems pretty clear to me that's what it's talking about. So, that really set up the novel well for me, and I thought, maybe this will be kind of like Lord of the Rings, right? You've got these all this action and adventure, and then here and there you've got these really deep moments of great introspection and poetry and song that just kind of help you pause in the moment and sink into the feelings the characters are describing. I mean, I don't know if I've ever talked about Lord of the Rings in depth, but I was very much obsessed with it at about 15 years old. And that's where I first learned to love poetry, is just the way Tolkien wove it into the story and just, immersed you in the characters' feelings through these very raw moments. So honestly, I don't know if I was expecting that here. I was hoping for something like that, right? And I think that, one thing that I've really struggled with through reading this is I don't feel like I've come back to that moment. Here, Paul has been on Arrakis, the desert planet, for some time. I mean, by this point, I'm not going to give the whole plot away or anything, but a lot of things have happened on that planet. He kind of went into it with a spirit of adventure and learning, excitement even. And to be fair, like, one could say, well, that just is going to trump everything else. Like, why should there be any of this nostalgia for Caladan or whatever? And you don't really see that in the film either, I would say. But I just think that, whereas in the movie, you're kind of submerged in this multi-sensory experience with the music and the scenery and the action and all this amazing stuff, and it just blows you away. I'm not getting that feeling here, and I'm feeling like, oh, here's another another little song or poem by Gurney. But for someone who's been completely uprooted from his way of life, and for somebody who is thrust into a series of events that are by no means pleasant or comforting, in fact, quite the reverse. Things are just kind of falling apart for him in so many ways, even as he's finding himself, right? There's just a lot that he's losing as well, but you don't really get the sense of that in these characters. Now, do correct me if I'm wrong. If you're reading this and you're finding a lot more of that than me, I'd love to hear where that's happening, where I may have missed it. I think there's a scene early here where he wakes up in his room on Arrakis, and he's like marveling at his room because it was kind of furnished in a way that he would like. Dearie me, I can't find it now. I saw it like a few minutes ago and now I've lost it. And there's a lovely scene too, I think, where it's Jessica, his mother, and I think she's looking at all their furniture and stuff that had been moved, which, again, really nice moment there. And to be fair, with everything that's happened after this, you might not expect there to be much time for nostalgic reminiscing. But I do think that it's one of those things that I see a lot in movies and TV shows, where instead of kind of shaping the narrative around the character or allowing them to permeate the story with their consciousness and their memories and their struggles. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in here. What I'm saying is I feel as if he's kind of being carried along by the story instead, and we don't get into those kinds of emotions as much. Maybe they don't exist for him. Maybe, he's just full steam ahead. This is my new life. That would be fair. Like, maybe that's how it is for him. But I'm not quite sure. And that's where it's like, I wish this book, now being halfway, wouldn't it be nice to feel like this character had been developed to that extent? And I'm not feeling it. Again, maybe I'm missing something. That's kind of like my general feelings about this and why I'm kind of, I guess, struggling to read it. I'm not seeing the layers that I'm so fond of, especially in characters. Oh, here's a nice little note that I did not see earlier. So here's a moment where Paul's father, the Duke, is remembering and longing for Caladan. Okay, so there's that. Maybe it's just Paul. Maybe my issue is with Paul. His father clearly misses Caladan here. I'll just read this part, why not? The Duke felt in this moment that his own dearest dream was to end all class distinctions and never again think of deadly order. He looked up and out of the dust at the unwinking stars and thought, around one of those little lights circles Caladan, but I'll never again see my home. The longing for Caladan was a sudden pain in his breast. He felt that it did not come from within himself, but that it reached out to him from Caladan. He could not bring himself to call this dry wasteland of Arrakis his home, and he doubted he ever would. I must mask my feelings, he thought, for the boy's sake. If ever he's to have a home, this must be it. I may think of Arrakis as a hell I've reached before death, but he must find here that which will inspire him. There must be something. Okay, so to be fair to Herbert, that's kind of what I was looking for, but from Paul, and I suppose it's fair to say maybe Paul doesn't have that. I don't know. I guess that's a question I'll leave for the commenters. Like, what do you think? Do you think I'm just being unfair to the characterization of Paul and that I'm looking for him, like, to be a different character than he is? Or do you feel like maybe the emotional side of him could have been developed a bit further as it pertains to his past life and, everything that's led up to this point? Okay, now I'm going to actually talk a bit about my reading experience in terms of, the plot actually and, differences with the movie and so on. If you have not read this book yet or, don't like spoilers or whatever, please feel free to stop the video here. I'm going to get into spoilers. If you are commenting, feel free to comment away, but just be careful. Like, let's not give too much away. So, again, a lot of what I've read so far pretty much mirrors the book. There's been one or two significant differences that I will touch on here. Big difference number one is that, and I don't think this was in the movie, at least not significantly, but there's this whole subplot where people are suspecting Jessica, that is Paul's mother, the Duke's concubine, to be the traitor. And I think it starts with, what's his name? Can't even remember his name. The wise guy, the wise man, the empath. He's an empath? He's not an empath. I am so sorry. I've forgotten his name. Oh, yes. Sorry, not an empath. A mentat. The one who's advising the Duke is suspecting Jessica. Oh, Thufir Hawat, I think is his name, or Hawat. Where is his name? This is not helping me. Yeah, okay. Thufir Hawat, mentat, an advisor to the Duke. So he's suspecting Jessica as the traitor here. If you've read far enough, if you watch the movie, she's not the traitor, it's the doctor. So that was kind of an interesting thing that wasn't much in the movie. I don't know. I can see why they left it out. I don't know that it's completely essential, but it does kind of change the dynamic here between the Duke and Jessica, and also between Jessica and Paul. What was a bigger change that I was not expecting here was Paul's connection with the Baron Harkonnen. And if I can find it here, I'll just point it out. I'm having great difficulty figuring out where things are mentioned here, even though... Here we go. So there's this whole chapter, and I think it's the last chapter of the first book. And this is represented in the film. it's like this conversation between Paul and Jessica after after the coup, basically, and just disaster, death of the Duke and everything. There's this whole reveal that that Jessica is the Baron's daughter, and that would make Paul related to the Baron, right? In a weird way. It gets even weirder because the Baron is then like attracted to Paul in a creepy way. So the Baron is pretty nasty. So that was a weird reveal, and I'm not sure yet what importance it has, because since then I can't say that it's really, I don't think it's had any impact on anything else yet. I suspect he's going to come back to that, but I'm like, that was a weird, just a really weird thing. But to that note, or on that note, I should say, I do feel like the characterization of the Baron has been kind of, I don't know what the word is, kitschy. Like, he's just kind of oozing bad villain, and I don't really think there's a lot more to him, which is fine. I'm actually reminded a lot of Lawrence of Arabia, because there's that one Turkish commander or whatever he is. He just gives off similar vibes. But it was just one of those things that like Frank Herbert just dropped in there, and I just don't know where he's gonna go with that. So that happened. Another big change or difference I noticed that I don't think it was explicitly called out in the movie. Maybe it wasn't, I just missed it, but so this one guy dies in the skirmish between like the Freemans and I think it's the Sardaukars. And one of these people dies, and the rest of the group's like, we're going to just we're going to process his body and squeeze the water out of it, basically. At least that's my understanding here, which is very unsettling. I didn't know the Freemans did that. I guess it makes sense from a purely utilitarian perspective, but that's kind of weird. So I'll be curious to see if they even bring that up in the movie at all, because that's kind of like a darker angle on the practices of the Freemans that I just didn't even know was a thing. Where I am right now, so they escaped. Oh boy. So they just flew the Thopter through the storm, and now they're kind of running for their life. I think they're making for some kind of outpost or something that I've already forgotten. So yeah, this is the scene in the movie where they're running carefully through the desert, trying not to get attacked. Well, not attacked, but trying not to get noticed anyway by the worms and so on. So I think that if you like really action-driven writing and just, this kind of narrative style, I think Dune is definitely the book for you. For me, I'm just lacking a bit more depth to the characters. And for me, it's not even that the depth doesn't exist conceptually, because I think these characters have it in them to be those kinds of deep characters. I mean, Jessica's life, you could probably write a whole book about that, right? Paul, it's hard to get to know him, even though we're already on page 306. I don't feel like I know him that well, but I'm sure he has enough experience in his life that you could dig into that further. Obviously, we're going to meet a whole slew of new characters as we move into the second part of the book, and presumably how he, joins up with the Freemans and everything. So there's that, right? But I'm not feeling that investment in those sides of the characters. And I feel like by page 306, I probably should. So that's just kind of my thoughts so far. Am I going to finish it? I fully intend to. Knowing me, I'm probably going to be procrastinating mightily, but I do intend to finish it by the time the second film comes out. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I just believe it's more than a story. Like, writing is so much more than just a story, because I think the story is great. Character concepts are fantastic. I think that's why it was such a great movie, right? The framework is there, and the movie actually, in my opinion, fleshed out a bunch of things, or at least compensated for certain things just by power of that medium where you've got more going on visually and, you know, the music and everything. I would say, you know, I've always thought that the first Dune film, the one from 2021, was like an opera. If you've watched enough operas, as I like to do, you know, operas tend to be pretty light on character development. They tend to be pretty light on, you know, anything other than the action and some key, you know, emotional or romantic scenes between characters. They have these really signature moments. So, you know, obviously the most famous one would be Nessun Dorma from Turandot. The tenor's aria about how he's going to solve the puzzle and win the princess, and just, you know, not really getting into, you know, the prince's or the princess's, you know, childhood backstory and life and everything. Not needing to, because it's an opera, because you're immersed in the moment. And I think films do that well, operas do that well. I don't like it when books do that. And maybe that's just me. So I'm going to stop there. I feel like I've gone on long enough. Let me know your thoughts on this book if you've read it. Maybe share if you want, you know, your thoughts on the movie or expectations about this book. Hopefully I will do a sequel to this video by the end of the year. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. See ya.